I'm going to go ahead and move to our next slide. I'd like to thank our speakers today. We have Mike Willis, Assistant Director in the Office of Structured Disclosure, the Division of Economic and Risk Analysis at the SEC. And we also have Walter Hampshire, who's Senior IT Program Manager in the Office of Structured Disclosure at the Securities and Exchange Commission. And we also have Campbell Pride, President and CEO of XBRL US. Campbell is going to be taking our SEC officials through a series of questions related to Inline XBRL. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Campbell. Actually, first, I do want to mention that if anyone has any problems, any technical issues with audio or visuals, please send us an email to support@xbrl.us. That's support@xbrl.us. And we'll do our best to get you back on online. So again, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Campbell.
Thank you, Michelle. Just to reiterate what Michelle said, if you do have any questions, you can answer them during the presentation. And if you write them in, we'll answer those at the end. And if we get too many questions to get through, we'll provide written answers as well, where we can during the webinar. So the agenda for today is just to go through business questions, just some of the general aspects of Inline XBRL and how they effectively could affect your decision on when you're going to use it. We're going to have a demonstration of the inline viewer, just so you feel a bit more comfortable with it, you can understand how it works. Then we'll get into some more technical questions. We've had a number of these over the last 6 months, so some of the ones that recur, we're just going to go through some of those again. And at the end, we'll have an open Q&A, so we can get any questions answered that we don't answer during the session today. So just to kick it off, there's some questions to the SEC, just around business questions, and so maybe we can just ask Mike or Walter on this one, please, to just explain the SEC exemptive order for using Inline XBRL.
Sure, thank you, Campbell. This is Mike, and before we get into that typical disclaimer, the SEC, as a matter of policy, disclaims responsibility for public publication or statement by any of its employees, and therefore the views that we express today are our own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Commission or other members of the staff of the Commission. So thanks for having us. We appreciate it, and we're happy to do this at any time to help educate folks on the inline topic and anything else related to the structured disclosure. So the exemptive order is a voluntary program for the inline format. It allows companies to file the inline documents. It does not change the liability or certification scenarios that are already in place. So it's simply a voluntary idea for the filing of the inline format with the reports. It's a single document versus the two in the past. So under the voluntary program, you submit the inline document and you no longer have to submit the two separate HTML or XBRL reports. The program times out in March of 2020, so there is a back-end time limit to it. Additionally, the open source inline viewer, which we'll demo in a few minutes, is open source. It's freely available on the open source XBRL community site at REL, and it's also already embedded in the EDGAR platform. So if you see an XBRL inline document in EDGAR, you're also looking at the inline viewer when you pull it up.
Okay, thanks, Mike. So just to get an idea of, obviously the program's just come into effect, have any companies reported in Inline XBRL yet? Are there any filings that folks can have a look at?
Okay, so right now we've had 8 filings by 7 companies in the inline format to date. So that's sort of what we've seen, and we hope to be able to enable companies to view those in a more effective manner than searching through EDGAR in the not too distant future. So I'd say stay tuned for that.
Okay, thank you. So just if I'm a company and I want to report in Inline XBRL, what are some of the things I should really think about doing? One of the questions people would ask is, obviously there's software providers supporting Inline XBRL. Is there the general things I should know before making that decision?
Sure, I think it would be great to talk to the software vendors and service providers that the filers are working with. We have seen that a couple of the vendors are already supporting it. There's been no change in their licensing structure at this point. We do talk to the other vendors. There's been a couple of hundred test filings from kind of across the range of the software vendors. But I think in order for a filer to ensure that their service provider or software vendor is supporting it, they should talk directly to them.
Okay, and then if a company wants to participate in the program, is it flexible in terms of their participation? Can they file an inline XBRL, not file in the next period?
Absolutely. You can opt in, you can opt out, whatever you'd like to do. We're really just trying to gather information from the experience of companies using the inline format, and also hear from the investor community as to what they think as well, the aggregators. So it's a voluntary program. We're trying to gather information about what people think about it.
Right. So maybe you could talk about what are some of the advantages to the company of reporting an inline XBRL rather than just continuing with what you're doing today.
Sure. I think the big thing that I see, and we'll show you this in a minute with the demo, is the ability to do topic searches. So as a retired audit partner, I can remember the days of having to go through the checklist, the disclosure checklist, 750 plus of my favorite questions that I had to go play Where's Waldo to find all those disclosures. So that physical idea of looking for disclosures, the inline viewer now allows you to search based upon the FASB codified topics. And so that is a completely different paradigm in terms of finding information and finding specific disclosures that are in a draft report or a final report. So I think the topic search is a real big benefit, not only for the filers, but also for any of their audit staff, either internal or external, that are looking for those disclosures. There are also some filters in there that we'll show you that have to do with data quality, negative values, axes, some of the common quality issues that allows you to see that information in a much more effective and efficient manner. I would say that, there's other navigational aids, which we'll demo in a minute, Campbell, but I really think from a filer perspective that the topic search and the filters are the two big benefits for them.
So that leads to the second question. If I'm a reader of the financial statements, would I find it easier or advantageous to look at an inline XBRL data file versus an HTML file?
Absolutely. If you're looking for disclosures, you'll be able to find them much more effectively. In an HTML report, it's the Control F. So if I'm looking for stock compensation and I find those words may not be the only indicator that's a stock compensation related disclosure. So the reader has to either be a professional thesaurus and understand all the different combination of words that might be used in stock compensation disclosures, or they can use the inline viewer and simply search on topic 718 and have all those disclosures listed for them in a dynamic index. Think on that same point of a dynamic index for a table of contents, that's also provided. So instead of having to prepare a table of contents, you're actually going to have one directly available for all of your block text tag disclosure types. Those are all going to be listed as a dynamic index in the viewer. So a couple of different benefits there for the readers as well, the viewers.
Right. So and there's no change in the liability for issuers related to inline XBRL, correct?
That's correct, and no change in the certification rules either.
Okay, great. So it's all upside. So maybe I can hand it back to Michelle. Then we'll have some CPE questions, and then we'll go to a demo.
Great, thank you, Campbell. Yes, we're going to go to two poll questions. So if we could bring up the first poll, and for those of you who have asked to get CPE credit, please make sure that you respond here. So the first question is, what is an inline XBRL document? Is it a combination of XBRL and HTML? Is it a combination of XBRL and PDF? Or is it an XML file? So if you could please respond to the question. And we're just going to wait a couple of seconds to give people an opportunity to respond. So you just click on the button for the answer that you think most fits. Okay, I think we can close down that poll question. And we'll be bringing up our second poll question. Okay, the SEC exemptive order on Inline XBRL. Which answer do you think is most appropriate? It mandates the use of Inline XBRL by issuers. It allows the use of Inline XBRL by issuers, or it allows issuers to file using Inline XBRL in addition to their HTML filing. Which do you think is the most appropriate answer? Just click on the button that seems most correct. Okay, and I think we should be able to close down that poll. Great, thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the next part of our presentation where Walter Hampshire from the SEC is going to give a demo of the inline viewer. So Walter, I'm going to pause my sharing here, and I'm going to turn over to you, and you should be able to begin sharing your screen. And you should make sure that you unmute yourself. Okay, Walter, are you there? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing because maybe I need to stop sharing altogether here. Okay, and if Walter, you could speak and let us know if I think that you still may be on mute. Okay, just bear with us for a minute here. Okay, Walter is having a little bit of technical difficulties, and so he is dialing in right now. He's having some difficulties with the computer audio, so he's going to get onto the phone audio. So we'll just give him a minute.
Hello, Michelle, are you there?
Yes, I am. Is that Walter?
Yes, Walter and Mike are here.
Okay, great. Okay. And it looks like Walter is beginning to share his screen.
Let me know when it's there.
All right, not quite there yet.
Well, that's odd. Are you seeing anything there?
I'm just seeing that Walter Hampshire has started screen sharing. So maybe instead of, if you're trying to share just an individual section, maybe just share your entire screen if that's okay. And of course, we just tested this literally 20 minutes ago.
How do I do this? All right, so if I quit this, now where is my, oh, now we have no connection at all. Oh, there it is. Sharing frame window. Yeah, sorry, we're really running into problems here.
Michelle, maybe what we ought to do is continue with the questions while we try and get the inline demo back and sharing.
Sure. Okay.
Apologies.
Okay, hang on. And I am not sharing my screen, just so I'm not sure. Okay. Is anyone seen my screen? Because my screen should not be shared. Just to.
It is not sharing.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to go back and share my screen again, and we'll get into the technical questions. Okay, so hang on one second. All right. Okay. So why don't we'll go through the technical questions and then we'll come back and circle back and hopefully be able to do the viewer a bit later. Okay. So Campbell, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk through additional questions here.
Can you guys hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great.
Michelle, we're back.
Okay. Okay, should we go, why don't we, I'm going to stop sharing and Campbell and Walter, I'm sorry, let's see if we can get you going here. Okay.
Maybe we ought to continue with the questions because we're having difficulty on the computer side.
Screen sharing side, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Okay. So I'm sharing my screen again, and Campbell, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. So the question to Walter and Mike is how much extra effort is involved in reporting in an inline XBRL format, and how challenging it will be for issuers to make that transition?
Well, clearly it depends on their current state and the set of software and the processes that they're using now. The intent is, though, that in the same sense that when you're using a modern XBRL tagging tool, there's at least some equivalent of a save as, right? In other words, there's some notion in which you are actually, there's some moment at which you are actually going to export the instance document. So nothing should change in your taxonomy at all, okay? So that's one thing to realize. So to the extent that you have a fair amount of effort each quarter, each year, however often it may be, in adapting the taxonomy or making changes to your taxonomy, none of that changes at all. And then for the software that you're using to actually tag the statement, depending on whether you're essentially generating that filing from a database or from some other kind of information, then truly you're really doing a different kind of save as, because either you're writing out HTML today or you're writing out HTML with the additional XBRL tags, which you already know from your filing or from your tool exactly where they're supposed to go. Now, if what you're doing is more of a bolt-on process where somebody's sort of delivering to you a filing and then you're manually creating the filing in a totally separate tool where there's no connection between the original presentation, if you will, the original document, and how it actually comes out as facts, clearly you're going to have more issues. And so that, in fact, is one of the reasons why we have a voluntary period, so that vendors and everyone else has a chance to adapt to what we think is going to be something that we're going to want to do a lot more of in the future.
Okay, so we have a question here where someone asked, a multiple registrants question. The first, let's break it into two parts, I suppose. If a company has multiple registrants, how will this look in the rendered inline XBRL?
In the same way it looks in our HTML.
And then,
the basic idea is, I think what's going on here is that what they may be referring to, I'm guessing, because the short answer is, of course, it shouldn't look any different. They may be talking about the notion of you have a single number appearing in the original HTML document, which in fact applies to several registrants and therefore needs to be tagged multiple times. In that case, it's really no different than any other situation in inline where you have a single number presented and it's the same element that needs to be presented in different contexts. So here's a very simple example. If you have a that says there are 0 shares authorized in 2016, 2015, and 2014, that is 3 facts, but the digit 0 only appears once. So inline does allow you to essentially wrap that 0 in tags 3 times. Wrap it once, wrap those again, wrap it again. Now you have 3 different facts, all referring to the same little chunk of text. In this case, it's just the number 0. So by extension, if you think about needing to, let's say you have a number which is, I don't know, the number of business segments. Okay, so you have the number of business segments, and it's true both for a subsidiary and for the parent company. Two different facts. You tag the number 7 once for the parent and wrap that again with the tags that says this is the same number for the subsidiary. So I think that is what was being asked here. In other words, if you have, how do you tag the same chunk of text with multiple tags? If it means something different, then let's refer back then to Mike's answer, which is it really shouldn't be any different at all, and it's not at all clear what then the question means.
Okay.
I think we may need to continue this way, because I think if I were to, now that I've rebooted my machine, and if I click on this link, it's going to kick us out of this phone conversation because we're participant number 34 or whatever it is. So I think we might need to just continue this way.
Yep. And what I can do is I can share my screen with the inline filing, if you like, and we can walk through that.
Yes.
That'd be great.
Okay. Next question. If you'll get the next slide, Michelle. So does the use of inline XBRL result in the XBRL tag data automatically rendering consistent with the HTML version? And then does that eliminate the need to review consistency between the XBRL rendering and the HTML version?
No, but let's understand that the XBRL rendering, as it's presented by the XBRL renderer, is not nearly as important as the content of the tags and the way in which it corresponded to the original. So if you're going to choose one or the other to worry about, you clearly want to worry about making sure that the HTML document, or what used to be an HTML document, is tagged properly, and the proper tags were chosen for each value presented there. And the rendering, in some sense, has always been a secondary consideration. Now, I understand that for most folks now, their review process has to necessarily look at the rendered output because there's really no other good way of looking at it other than that rendering. And they've taken some pains already to make sure that that is not only complying with the various guidance in the EDGAR filer manual having to do with the order of line items, where things are presented in the income statement, the balance sheet, and so on, but also have taken some pains to try and select the columns of data or the other rows of data that would be presented. So I understand that a lot of that has gone on. None of that should really change, but the review process really should be focusing on the original document and making sure that the tagging there is correct and complete. Well, let me give you an example here, okay? If I have an income statement and a cash flow, and the net income number appears in both places, right? It's the same line, the same dollar figures are in both places. It's more important that you make sure that you have tagged both places with the same tags and the same content than it is to worry about exactly how it renders on the as output. Now, as it happens, the way the renderer will work is just going to pick one of those, let's assume it's a pair of numbers, and present them in both places, assuming that you built your presentation links correctly. But once again, it's much more important that you be able to look at the original document under the inline viewer and see that, in fact, yeah, every number on the income statement was tagged, including the net income, and every number on the cash flow was tagged, including the net income. The fact that it's tagged twice is already handled by EDGAR. It's already handled by the validator. That's more important, that you actually are tagging the original location and using the proper tag than it is to worry about exactly how the rendering works.
Okay, so just on questions on this before we do have a look at the viewer, there were some issues with the original viewer, and I know you guys are addressing them. So what are some of the new features that are going to be in the new viewer that you're working on? Okay,
so one important feature, you wouldn't think it would be all that important, but quite frankly, it didn't occur to us, people want to be able to print the filing, like directly from the website. And it turned out that trying to do that via PDF or whatever didn't work so well. We now will be adding a feature that essentially gives you a print view, much as if you go onto an airline ticketing system and it gives you a print view of your boarding pass, and from there you print, a slightly simplified page. The same idea, and we'll be providing that in the inline viewer. A more important thing is, and I believe I spoke about this in previous webinars, there's a construct that one can use in Inline XBRL to essentially stitch together a whole bunch of chunks of text into a single tagged fact. And this is particularly useful if you're dealing with, let's say, a note which covers several pages or proceeds across a page break. This is very, very handy to be able to use this thing called a continuation, which once again, you can think of as stitching together the two pieces. And the inline viewer didn't display those things correctly. It would only display the very first part, which we assumed was always going to be enough. It turns out that no, that's not enough. So the new viewer, which we have made a lot of progress on, is working very nicely now. We just haven't been able to release it. Does handle continuations. It displays chunks of text that have been continued, and we regard that as now a solved problem. I know that there's something I'm forgetting having to do with references, way references or footnotes are displayed, but there's a whole bunch of small issues which have been reported to us. Thank you very much by folks either to the arel.org website or its GitHub or its Atlassian site, or directly to us by various methods. We've heard about problems which we have fixed. So once again, keep those bug reports coming. Always send us the actual filing or an actual URL if you possibly can. Very hard for us to diagnose it without it.
Okay, so Michelle, if we go to the next slide, does Inline XBRL actually change anything in the EDGAR submission process?
In the sense that you don't, there's a particular attachment called a .ins file, which would no longer exist. If you're filing in Inline XBRL, that attachment is not necessary because you don't need a separate document. You don't need a separate instance document. All the information, all the tags are already in the main filing. So there is one less file to produce. I'm sorry, to attach to your EDGAR filing. When it comes out on the back end on the EDGAR website, a difference that you will see is that you will see on the page a link to what we call the extracted instance document. In other words, it's a file which has the same name as the original HTML file, only its extension is _HTM.xml. You'll see a link to that on the page, and that will contain essentially stripping out all of the HTML wrapping and all of the inline XBRL infrastructure, and just leave a raw, simple simple XBRL document, just as you are used to seeing. And you'll now see a link to that on the web page. And of course, it's also in the dissemination stream. So you would see, in a sense, two differences, one of which is you don't submit the instance document, but we do extract an instance document and post it on the website for you.
Okay, got it. So we had another question about reviewing Inline XBRL documents. How do you expect that do you think review of XBRL filings will be easier with Inline XBRL? And what would the process be, or how do you think the process may change?
Well, my understanding is that the way that most financials are prepared, there's more than one individual involved, and they are creating different parts of the financial statement. There's somebody who's responsible for assembling the final document, and that's the thing which gets reviewed. And so consequently, I would assume that being able to look at only a single document to handle both of your compliance requirements, not only the document itself, but also the XBRL tagging, has got to expedite indeed, to the extent that we have made economic analyses of that process, that seems to be a pretty clear agreement among vendors and other interested parties that the mere fact of now only needing to look at a single document is enormously helpful.
Maybe, Campbell, just to add to what Walter said, the topic search item I mentioned earlier, I think is another thing that might be an option for filers and their auditors. Additionally, the ability to mouse over disclosure elements in the HTML document and have the underlying XBRL metadata visible for review would give the filer the ability to very quickly assess the tags that Walter just mentioned.
Right. Okay, so Nick, and we'll have a look at this in a minute when we do the demo. The final question on this is, what if any changes will there be to the XBRL zip files? And I think you kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but will the zip files still be available?
Yeah, by zip files, what they're talking about is essentially each of the different XBRL attachments is currently placed into a zip file and posted in the output dissemination stream. And the principle there that it's only files that have been prepared by the filers that go into that zip file. And that principle still holds. So when you have an inline filing, the zip file would contain the original .htm file, which is the inline file, and the supporting taxonomy and link-based files. It will not contain the extracted instance document. The extracted instance document is available on the website in the way that I described before. That does not go into the zip file.
Yep. Okay, so let's see if we can, before we do the CPE questions, let's see if we can try and do I can see if I can share my screen here. Let's bring this up. So Michelle, if we could stop sharing your screen and then I can share mine, that would be great.
Right, Campbell, I've stopped sharing my screen.
Yeah, and so you cannot start screen while the other participant is sharing. Okay.
Okay.
So Michelle,
saying that I'm not sharing my screen anymore.
I think the same problems that Walter was having. I was saying. So what I'm going to do is just send you the link to the
Okay. Well, Mark, is there anything you can do to help us with this? Mark Ward.
Yeah, I don't think Mark can.
Yeah.
So Michelle, I'm just going to send you the link, and then you can bring it up, and then Walter can walk us through it.
Sure. Okay.
So this is the this is the example. This is the AC.
Yeah, well, that was you sharing your screen a minute ago.
Yeah, I'm saying it won't let me. But if you got that link, if you could bring that up, that would be good.
Okay. Okay, so you should be able to see this now?
Yep.
Okay.
So we'll get Michelle. Michelle will walk us through this. Walter, if you want to just walk people through how the inline testing sample here works.
We actually can't see anything but the technical questions slide. We're still seeing that.
Well, we're not on the WebEx.
Oh, you're not. Okay.
So I can, do it by memory, but
Okay.
I think if you click on the index side on the left-hand side, so we could see the topical index, that would probably be useful.
So I want to explain what we're doing here. We're looking now at the menu drop-down, okay, which is showing information, save XBRL instance, save XBRL zip, settings and help. Do you want to?
Yeah.
Or should I go on the index? Okay. And we're on the index, which shows tagged sections, then financial statements.
Yeah, so if you just click on the thing that says sections, that little downward arrow.
Yep, that's where I am.
Yeah, that brings open the tag sections, and just click on the notes to the financial statements. And this is a mock filing, so it gives you some examples there of what's possible.
Okay, I'm going to go to. Should I go to segment information?
You could, sure, go to segment information. I'll drop you right there. So this is in a simple mock-up filing. For most of the live filings, there's, you know, a page and a half of, you know, additional links there. While you're in segment, if you just mouse over any of the values, like the passenger main line, you mouse over that, you can see some of the metadata. If you double click on that element, you'll see a little box pop up that says attributes, which gives you the fact, an axis, number, etc. If you hit the little arrow at the bottom or the little ball at the bottom, go to the second one, it'll show you the label, which includes a definition.
Yep, we're seeing that here, definition label. Mm-hmm.
And if you hit the next ball, it shows you the references. And this is the powerful thing about Inline, is you can now search the references. And if you go one more ball, it'll show you the relationship in the calculation hierarchy, if at all. So then you can close that, and you can close the section. And if you wanted to go up and look at the data filters in the top, you can look at the data filters, show you the negative values. And then on the right-hand side, if you hit the negative values, you should see over on the right, it says facts. If you click on that downward arrow, it will show you all the disclosure elements that have negative values.
Okay.
So far,
yeah, I clicked on negative values, and is highlighting?
Where it says at the top, Michelle, it says facts 19.
Yeah, over on the right-hand side.
Great. Okay.
Just click that arrow, and you'll see a little dynamic index window on the right-hand side will pop open.
Okay, so these are all the values that are reported as negative.
That's correct.
Okay.
Then you can just click on each one of them, and it will take you very quickly to that disclosure, and then the reviewer can look at it to see, you know, does this make sense for this number to be negative? So it works that way with the other filters, not only the data filter, but the tags filter could show you the custom elements or standard elements.
So if you just want to look at extensions that are created, you can click on that filter. And this one, okay, for this there's facts or 0. Well, let's go to the standard.
Well, it's not 0, it's actually 6. But you need to remove the negative filter.
Okay.
Because what you're now seeing.
So go over, see the little breadcrumbs over there.
Yeah, there you go. Click that.
There we go. Okay. So now if I go to custom only, it's showing me this. Yeah, here's the 6 facts.
Yeah.
Show enough.
Okay, great. And I just went to goodwill and intangible assets less accumulated. I can't read the rest of it. Oh, accumulated amortization. So this is an extension element that was created, and then it gives me all the attributes, and it shows me exactly where it is in the filing.
That's correct.
Okay.
So those are some of the examples. The topic search for this particular mock-up filing is not that great. I think in the live filings, it's much more effective. So I would suggest that if you want to look at that, the way you affect the reference search, Michelle, is you go over to the menu item on the far left, upper left-hand corner, click that down. Go to settings. Yep, and then underneath search options, just click the include references box. And then that would allow you to search on a FASB topic, say FASB, FASB, ampersand, 718 would be the stock compensation one. Probably need a space in there. There you go. You need to take out the custom only.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's a good, yeah, right there. There you go. So it's going to give you 5 stock compensation disclosures. If you were to search on the word stock compensation, it would give you 1. So this is an example of why the topic search gives you all the disclosures related to a topic, not just the words that you're looking for.
Okay, great.
We're also aware that it's open source. So this box that Michelle has up here in the middle where it says calculation, at least one of the vendors has modified that box to show time series charting information. So making it up here, but if you were to click on revenues, it would show you a chart of the quarterly revenue amounts for that company over the last, say, 2 years. Another option would be to look at that same information, charting information on peers. And so one of the things we're really hopeful for is that the software community, with input from the filer and analyst community, will begin to modify the inline open source viewer, and we'll be able to pull some of those features and capabilities back into the commission viewer at some point in the future.
Right, so that's just one software company that's taken this and has been able to really easily adapt it to do different things. So I imagine, a lot of software providers will have back, take the source code and be able to do interesting things with it.
Yeah, so Mike, and so it would be possible for a company's investor relations group as well to take that code and use it and then overlay information on their filing too, correct?
That's correct. And you keep going down that path, Campbell, you could see how the reference concepts could be linked to other relevant material on the investor relations site.
Okay, is there anything else that we should show here, Mike and Walter? And I apologize for the technical problems.
No, I think we wanted to highlight the main features of the dynamic indexes on the left and right-hand sides, search results on the right, table of contents on the left, the filters on the top of the bar, the data tags, and additional filters. Those are quality assessment targeting the common quality issues. And then, of course, the search idea that's right there with the stock compensation example. There's other features, but I think those are the primary things we want to highlight given time today.
Yeah, and just we did have one question come in on this, and they'd asked, does the search include share-based extension element values?
So an extension would not have a reference, so you would not be able to search those references.
Yeah, but I think the thing to remember if the person asks the question is you can narrow down extensions by what Mike and Michelle showed before, just the extension topics. Then you can do a search on stock-based compensation as well. So you can look for the word in the same way you may do a find. But you can obviously cut it down to a much smaller population than you would in an HTML filing, because you can just limit it down to those extension items.
Yes.
Okay, well, just a reminder to everyone that if you do have questions, you can post them to the Q&A link at the top of your screen. And if we're finished with the viewer, we can go on to CPE questions. Or is there anything else that you wanted to cover here?
No, I think that's it.
Good.
Great, thank you. Okay, so let's go to CPE questions. And the first question we have is, the SEC exemptive order is scheduled to continue until when? Until 2020, indefinitely, or until 2017? So please submit your response here. Just by clicking the button. And we'll just give a few more seconds here for people to submit their responses. Okay, why don't we close down that poll, and we'll bring up the next poll. And the question, the Inline XBRL technical specification is currently used for private company reporting in the UK, for private company reporting in the US, or for bank institutional reporting in the US. So submit your response to this question. And this is our final poll for the day. Okay, so I think we'll go ahead and close this down. And Campbell, did you have any other questions?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions here that I had emails on. The first question is, how are data aggregators potentially using Inline XBRL? What are they? Do you know of anything that they're planning to do with it?
I do not know of any plans specifically. I know of various things that they might do once the volume was larger. I think what we've done is try and focus on smoothing the transition by providing a equivalent format XBRL document extracted from the inline. While I wouldn't say that that will go on forever, it is, sort of one of the major items that we've tried to do in order to make sure that that transition is smooth.
Yeah, and I can answer what I've seen too. I've seen some companies, main data aggregators, the Inline XBRL makes it easier to link the XBRL data back to the original filing. So a lot of them now are starting to add, if you're pulling data into spreadsheets, they're putting a link now, and they can link that back to the original filing, which makes investors happier. If they're looking at this data, they can actually see that it's a number that actually came from the filing. With Inline XBRL, that's much easier to create the link between the data that was reported and the original filing as well. So that's all the questions, additional questions that I'd received, Michelle. If anyone has any other questions, you can put them in the tab box in the Q&A session here. And then we can either answer them, and if you have any other questions and we don't get to them, we'll give a written response to them as well.
Campbell, I think we are getting some additional questions here. And if you don't mind if I just jump in here and ask these questions of Walter and Mike, is the viewer sample available now on sec.gov?
Yes, there's a mock-up filing, the one that you demoed, that's on the SEC structured data website.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also 8 filings that are in EDGAR. And then there's the open source viewer code that's on the arel.org website, the XBRL community website, which is the same website where the previewer and renderers are.
Great, thank you. The next question is, does the SEC plan any restrictions on portfolio and or list scraper programs? And I'm assuming that's scraping data.
I'm sorry, could you just repeat the question? I didn't quite catch the words portfolio what?
Portfolio and or list scraper programs.
I honestly, I don't understand what the question is. Is it referring to XBRL? Because there's obviously other filings that are not in Inline XBRL or in XBRL that don't necessarily have. I mean, the portfolio list is the sort of thing you've seen in a form NCSR or NCSRS. I don't think we'd expect to see any inline filings of that sort. So I'm sorry, I just don't understand the question.
Okay, so maybe the individual who asked that question, if they could just send a little clarification through, then we can come back to that one.
Michelle, maybe to that point, we do have an Ask Structured Data email under the Contact Us on the website. And so we really encourage folks to use that and ask questions directly, and the staff's more than happy to respond and get them the answers and the information they need.
That's great. And so, Mike, again, that is askstructureddata@sec.gov.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's
the email address is structureddata@sec.gov. Structureddata@sec.gov.
And that's with 2 D's in the middle, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
And you can find it on the sec.gov/structureddata.gov website.
Great. Okay. That's really helpful. Thank you. Okay, well, I think we're gonna go to our final slide here. I want to thank our speakers, and if you do have questions, you can come back to us or go to structureddata@sec.gov for responses. And I wanted to invite our attendees to join us for a couple of other events that we have coming up. We have a one-day SEC filer workshop taking place in New York on November 2nd. And we're actually going to have speakers there from, actually Mike and Walter are both going to join us from the SEC. We'll have members of the FASB. We'll have representatives from accounting firms. And it's a one-day, very interactive, exercise-driven workshop that's focusing on data quality and improving your filings, and also on understanding some of the regulatory issues coming down the road. We also have a program tomorrow that is geared primarily for software providers and data providers, and it's a joint webinar with the FASB at 1 o'clock, and it's going to focus on some structural changes that the FASB is proposing making to the US GAAP taxonomy that will affect software providers and data providers. So issuers are welcome to join, but it's primarily going to be geared towards structural changes that affect the software that you're using. So with that, I think we have one more question, if you don't mind me asking. Oh, this is a clarification on the scraper program. The question is, if one wants to access several filings with a scraper program, will there be any restrictions on inline XBRL access? I don't know, Walter, if that makes it clear.
Oh, you mean like restriction? No, no. I can't imagine why there would be. If it's on the SEC website, it has the same status as any other page. So, yeah, I don't see why. I don't see why that would. I'm not sure what they're getting at. Can't imagine any reason why it would be treated any differently.
Okay, great. I'm glad we were able to answer that individual's question. And Mike and Walter, thank you very much for joining us today. Sorry about some of the technical glitches that we had, but I think it was a really informative and useful presentation. And we hope that filers will begin embracing Inline XBRL even more, and we'll see more filings coming across. Okay, thank you.
That sounds great. Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.